Welcome in to episode 7 of the Godly Young Men podcast. Happy Valentine's Day to everybody. We have got a really good episode lined up. It's also Super Bowl weekend. We're recording 2 days before the Super Bowl, so we actually don't know who won the Super Bowl, but go Chiefs. But you do, of course, because it's 3 days after. But in honor of the Super Bowl, we are wearing jerseys. Joe is wearing his Peyton Manning. Oh, no, I'm sorry.
Yeah,
John Elway
no, the
jersey,
better one.
The second best Denver quarterback ever. And you might be wondering why I'm wearing a basketball jersey on Super Bowl weekend, but it's because a week ago today, the greatest basketball player of all time,
the GOAT,
broke the all-time scoring record. So, had to pay tribute. But
right.
In all seriousness, happy Valentine's Day to everybody. Kind of in honor of Valentine's Day, the episode that we have lined up for today, how to talk to girls. We previewed it last week. We talked about confidence and arrogance last week, and that really kind of plays into this episode, really ties in very well.
Absolutely.
And so we wanted to devote this Valentine's Day episode to how to talk to girls. Because again, with our podcast demographic, 15 to 25 years old is kind of the age that we're going for here. Let's face it, girls are on young guys'
They're on the radar.
Quite a bit from that age. So, Joe, I'll ask you, what do we want to hit with this episode? Or maybe a better question would be, why do we decide to do this episode?
Yeah, we want to first acknowledge the fact that we realize not everybody who is listening is probably going to be old enough, especially on the younger end. If you're 15, 16, and you really just want to date a girl, what's the point? You can very easily get into trouble. This isn't a dating episode, but we do want to acknowledge that for the younger ones there, you may not be in a position. However, there's never a bad time to learn how to talk to girls. And one of the reasons we want to do it, yes, it's Valentine's Day, so that's kind of what sparked this. But so much of confidence and going forward is how do we present ourselves?
Sure.
We're probably going to have a full episode maybe on that alone, on how we present ourselves. But as you said, how many young men have girls on their mind? Whether they're in a relationship or not, we find that this can be helpful to talk to girls. And I think it's irresponsible to not already have this on your mind as to knowing how to talk to girls, because we see a lot of kids where they get to 16, 17, 18 and they're really, really awkward and they're really shy, or girls are just alien to them. They have no idea. And that's sad. That's sad to us. That's something that we're looking to change. So that's one of the reasons we wanted to do this.
Yeah, absolutely. And the key to a lot of this is just good communication skills. Let's face it. A lot of young people don't have good communication skills today.
Right.
We've resorted so much to online stuff, which we'll get into here in a second, but communication skills, face-to-face talking, having a conversation with a guy or girl is tough for a lot of young men. And so we wanted to devote this episode specifically to how do I carry on a conversation? How do I talk to a girl? And maybe it's not necessarily one that you have interest in, but maybe it is. And so what are kind of the do's and don'ts of that? But the good communication skills, so to kind of preview the episode, we got kind of 7 tips that we want to give as far as how to talk to girls. And obviously, we're not going to be able to cover every single possible thing that's out there. These are just the 7 that we felt were really important for young guys to learn. But before we get into that, kind of the reason why this is so important, and you kind of touched on it, is because, look, if you're 15 to 25, you are either about 5 years away from marriage, 1 or 2 years away from marriage, or already in marriage.
Right.
And so if you don't develop these communication skills now, where's that going to leave you when it's time to get married? Because a lot of people might be wondering, like you said, for the 15, 16-year-olds, they don't need to know how to talk to girls. It's not important. I kind of disagree. I think you need to have to begin to develop the communication skills at a younger age so that when the time comes for marriage, it's not like, all right, good luck. Go figure out how to talk to them.
Yes, that's exactly it. The girl portion of things, of going and getting a girl, some people may be too young for. Learning how to talk to them, nobody's really too young, because it is a matter of communication. It's the overarching principle to everything. I do a lot of therapy and couples therapy, and I would say communication is the single biggest issue for most married couples. They don't know how to communicate to one another. And the guys, you may be awkward, getting into the relationship with your future wife, girlfriend, whatever it may be. That doesn't really get a whole lot better in marriage. If you don't know how to share your emotions, if you don't know how to share parts of yourself before, you don't just magically flip this switch and you become some expert communicator when you get into marriage. This is something we have to establish at the earliest ages possible to say they're not aliens, they're not, just different creatures altogether. Like, they are humans, and here's how we talk to them. And so that's why we decided 7 principles. Well, we didn't initially decide 7.
Right.
We decided, let's talk about what worked for us, because we both got married at a pretty young age, and what worked for us. What are some tips that either we wish we knew, things that we use, and we came up with 7.
Let's be real for just a second, and then we'll get into it. I'm sure everybody here has observed the guy who is just kind of a bumbling idiot around girls, right? And that might be a little harsh, but he just doesn't really know how to talk to girls, kind of makes a fool of himself, and let's be real. Nobody wants to be that guy. Maybe you're somebody who's watching that like, oh, maybe I'm that guy. Hey, let's change that, right? That's the point of this. But I think everybody knows what we're talking about. You don't want to be that guy. Right. So let's get into some of those things. I'll start with the first one, and there's a reason we wanted to start with this one. It's so important. As far as principles go, this first one, don't resort to online chatting. That is the number one way guys think that they're supposed to talk to girls these days. Snapchat was huge several years ago. It's still pretty big. But in the conversations that I've had with a lot of guys, the first thing, it used to be when I was growing up, what would you do if you wanted to talk to a girl? You'd ask for their phone number, right? Yeah. Hey, give me your phone number. We'll text or whatever. That ain't it anymore. Right. That's not the first thing they ask for. What is it? It's what's your Snapchat? Snapchat's the first thing, right? Hey, let me get their Snapchat before I get their number. In many cases, before I even get their name, let me get their Snapchat. Yeah. Let me just come out right out the gate and say, don't do that. Do not make that the first thing that you ask for, the number one thing that you resort to, because that's what a lot of guys do. That's just online chatting,
right?
Texting, Snapchatting, Instagram messaging. And if you start a relationship that way, or you start talking to girls that way, get into it. That's not great, is what, what we're going for here.
No. And whether it's Snapchat, Instagram, TikTok, all of those are visually focused. And that's what's really changed is, let me get your number. Let me talk to you. Let me learn who you are.
Yeah.
Let me figure out what makes you tick, right? And what are your likes and dislikes and your family? And you end up building the relationship off of communication. With Snapchat, you could observe from afar, wow, she's hot. Okay, is she nice? Do you know her name? Do you know anything about her? Do you know her likes, dislikes?
You kind of get to keep like a wall up.
That's exactly it. So it keeps this barrier between us and them where I can observe them from afar on social media and I can, wow, that she's really, really pretty. Well, I already knew that. What else do I know about her? So if we're going for the Snapchat, well, it is a way for me to get to know her. Yeah, through small little texts and emojis. That's not a relationship. That's not how you talk to girls, is by sending a cute little emoji to flirt with her.
And that's not even to get into the dangers of Snapchat, which we're not going to touch. It's just the method of communication to just immediately go, well, let me get her Snapchat or let me get her Instagram DM.
It's stunted. It's not a real relationship. But we can convince ourselves that it is. We can convince ourselves that that's what's important is, hey, we're friends on social media. I'm friends with so many people I don't even know who they are. Well, she might be the next one unless you learn good communication, which, again, is the overarching principle. But number one, you're absolutely right. Don't resort to online chatting. I would say online dating either personally, but that's for a different episode too. But
we've lost the art of this right here.
Right.
Face-to-face communication. It's all, and I could be just as big a victim or just as guilty of this when it comes to just talking to people in general. I'd rather send a text in many cases because it's easier, it's quicker. You get to kind of think about your response. We don't need to lose this art, and especially with this guy-girl dynamic, if you really want to get to know a girl, if you're constantly doing it behind a shield of, well, let me get her message and I can think about how to respond and put my best, face out there as far as texting or Snapchat or whatever, that's not a good way. That's not a good practice to be in.
Right. So let's get into number 2. Don't be afraid of them. Don't be afraid of them. So the first is don't resort to online chatting.
Right.
Make sure that you're engaging in actual one-on-one relationships and conversations. But second, don't be afraid of them. It's so easy, especially for young guys, to go, whoa, I mean, what do I say? And she's really pretty, and I just, and I don't really know what to say.
Stutter over my words.
Yeah. We're not smooth at all. There's just this fear as I go to approach them, again, as though they're alien, as though they're somebody that I have no ability to comprehend. And we hear this from the culture a lot in TV shows and in movies and even in music, of the difference between guys and girls. And, well, they're really emotional and they think different. Guys are from Mars and women are from Venus or whatever. And so you hear these stereotypes of like, there's no way you're going to understand a girl. That's not true.
Right.
They are more like us than they're not. They're human. So what interests you? Well, maybe they have interests, right? Yeah, they think differently. They're women. Yeah, they may be more on the emotional end. They're not as visual as we are. There's obvious differences. We're called to different things by God. They're not alien. It's okay to talk with them.
A lot of this goes back to our last episode about confidence and arrogance, right?
Right.
And we talked about how girls like confidence in guys. That's just statistically proven, and we've seen that play out in our lives. And so it's one of those things that, look, I think a lot of guys think they're going to bite their head off, or that they're just going to, if you say the wrong thing or slip up with your words, that it's just going to be the end of the world. look, you may stutter over your words. You may say something that sounds like a total doofus. It's not the end of the world. Right. And I think a lot of times we get into that. I think that feeds the let me put on this facade, right? Let me act like I'm the best looking. Let me act like I sound the best. I'm the smartest guy in the room. Look, if this is a girl you want to have a relationship with and you want to carry that on, how long are you going to be able to keep that facade up? Not very long.
Right.
And so I think for a lot of guys, you just really have to get over this fear. If it is something where you're genuinely afraid, and I know not all guys are like that, but there are guys out there that are just downright afraid to talk to them. It's one of those things that it's so intimidating, and it doesn't have to be.
Right. If you're confident in yourself enough to say, what if I bring some things to the table, to this relationship? What if I were to go talk with them? They might think I'm interesting. If we read the positivity instead of the negativity in the situation, man, what if they reject me? What if they do all this? That's true. That could happen. And so what if we played the best case, worst case? What if they did? Worst case scenario. You go away, no different.
No worse off than you were.
Exactly. Yeah. Best case, they go, whoa, man, he's great. And a relationship has started on that front. So be willing to put yourself out there. Have the confidence to say, even if this doesn't work out, I'm okay.
I saw one of those things going around about like the things that men ought to teach their sons. And one of them I really kind of agreed with, and it was never be afraid to ask out the best looking girl in the room. And that's one of those things. It's like, have that confidence.
Yeah, there you go.
She might look at you and be like, no thanks, not going to give you the time of day. But don't be afraid to ask out the best looking girl in the room. You know what I mean?
We know, I'm sure we all know somebody who you look at the guy and you look at the girl and you go,
there's no way.
How in the world did he get?
Yes.
Did he get her?
Got the guy that's a 3 marrying
exactly.
a 9.
He's got a great personality. No, truly though.
Yeah.
Clearly he shot for the stars, shot for the moon, and achieved it. He got it. Good for him. He's got a lot going for him, or whatever it is, and she just happened to be attracted. So we think that the girls are always going to go for the bad boy. They're going to go for the hottie. They're going to go for all of the things that, oh, well, I'm just not those things. You don't know what a girl's going to go for. You really don't. Some girls don't find that to be very attractive at all.
This gets us into our next one.
That's exactly.
Go ahead. You go ahead and get us into it.
Well, right before, you put this on the outline.
Sorry.
In all caps, and I want to make sure.
Oh, that's right.
Is so important. Look her in the eye. It's
Absolutely.
a big part of confidence. I want to make sure we hit that one. When we're talking about not being afraid of them, look them in the eye. If you walk up and, hey, how's it going? My name's Joe.
Kind of like, just
kind of
afraid to meet their eye line. Yeah.
Exactly. Or the awkward ones where, I don't know if you ever had somebody do this, where they're kind of like, their eyes are just to the side of you. And you're
that's weird. Yeah.
Can you shift over your eyes? Don't do that.
That's why we started with the digital point, though, is because we're not used to that.
We're
Looking people in the eyes is very intimidating, especially a pretty girl.
Very, very true. So, yeah, when it's a pretty girl, that right there shows confidence. What an easy way to show confidence.
Yeah.
Look them in the eye, act like you're equal. Oh, wow, I could never get her. Well, then, yeah, you probably won't.
Right.
You're going in
That's
thinking
such a good point.
that.
Yeah.
So act like you're equal. You're human. She's human. She may like you. And if she doesn't, no skin off your nose. That's all right. You're no worse off. You'll just go to, somebody else. But it's not a make or break deal. Don't be afraid of them. You go ahead and get us into number 3.
Yeah, you were talking about, like, look, you may not know what she's interested in. That's kind of the next thing is you need to, as you're trying to talk to girls and learning how to talk to them, listen to what they have to say. Be interested in what they have to say. Again, kind of this lost art of conversation is we're so worried about how are we going to sound and what's our response going to sound like that we a lot of times just don't listen.
Right.
We don't listen to people. And if there's one thing that you'll hear in a lot of marriage seminars and a lot of classes about how guys and girls are different, girls want you to listen to them. And that is true. It's one of those things that if you're constantly just trying to figure out what your response is going to be and you're not listening, it's not a good thing. You need to ask questions. You need to find out about them. Learn. If you're always trying to have the smart response or always trying to be the guy, we talked about last episode, don't be the guy that always talks about yourself. Yeah. That very much ties in here. If you're always trying to tell your story and talk about you and the girl is, just kind of sitting there like, oh, cool, he just talks about himself all the time. Yeah. That's not going to take you very far.
We have our circle of what we're comfortable talking about.
Yeah.
And if a girl goes outside of it, we always figure out kind of like a black hole. We suck everything into what we know and what we're confident talking about. So, well, I did talk to her about her interests. Yeah, but it was through the lens of your interests. So you're always tying it back. She tells you about the time that she went to Italy, and instead of, well, I one time went to New York, and we went to Little Italy. No.
Tell me about Italy.
Tell me about Italy. You know nothing about Italy. You've never been. That's fascinating. Tell me about it. What was that like? What was your favorite part? What'd you think? That's how we begin to ask questions and how we get interested in them.
It's curiosity.
Yes, and don't always tie it back to your knowledge and what and your experiences and what you're used to. Be willing to go outside of it and be curious. Exactly. Ask the questions of like, I know nothing about that. Tell me. What does that mean? Why does that matter to you? Or what is this? Instead of projecting this ultra confidence of, I know all things. She knows you don't. You know you don't. So don't lie to him.
Yeah.
Why would we? We don't need to.
Exactly. There's a tendency a lot of times to kind of fake like you have the knowledge in a certain area. If somebody brings, it's not just girls, it's just any conversation where somebody brings something up and you kind of like fake the fact that you don't really know anything about it. And so you try to kind of act like you do. And again, that's a facade. Girls are going to see, other people are going to see right through that. Don't be afraid to admit that you kind of don't have anything of value to add to that part of the conversation. Right. But be willing to ask. Be willing to learn. I think that's a great point.
It's such a it's an easy point, right? It shouldn't be that difficult, but it's a common point to say. Listen to him, but it's so difficult practically to do it because there is an aspect of going out of your comfort zone. It's just uncomfortable for them to go off into something that you know nothing about.
Yeah.
Curiosity solves. Turn your anxiety into curiosity. That's something I work with in therapy is people are really anxious walking into the room. What if you were to get either excited or curious and you turned it into those things instead of anxious? I'm excited to talk with her. I'm curious about who she is. Make sure that we're not afraid of them, but that we're also listening to what they have to say. And if you learn to be an active listener, the eye contact, repeat back a few things that, she said this. Yeah, that's so this is what it was like. Yeah, that's exactly it. That's active listening skills. If you, as we're talking about going into marriage, that is huge in marriage for you to listen, actively listen to your wife. Not, well, what'd you say, honey? Or, well, I thought you said this. That's never what I said. Listen to them. Eye contact. Pay attention.
And start practicing now. That's the point. Before we get to number 4, there's one more aspect of this that I want to hit on, and that is there's a lot of guys that need to learn how to take a hint. Listen, we're telling you to have confidence. We're telling you to go for it. Ask out the best-looking girl in the room. But at the same time, there are going to be times where she's just not going to be interested in
when
you.
She says no, she says no.
Exactly. And I think there's a lot of guys that is like they can't take those hints, or maybe it's selective ignorance, if that even makes sense. But it's the idea that the girl is very clearly putting you in the friend zone and is just not interested in a relationship, and you're just pushing. Yeah. We got to have the self-awareness, and self-awareness, we got to have a whole episode on that because that's so important for especially for guys to have the self-awareness, but specifically for this point, to have the self-awareness that, look, she's not interested. That's okay. You can still talk to her. You can still be friends. But as far as kind of pushing the envelope about, let's be in a relationship, I'm interested in you. If she's not interested, take a hint, move on. The friend zone's the friend zone.
Friend zone hurts.
Yeah.
It hurts. It's not a fun place to be. Well, if I just try really hard, maybe I'll get her out of the friend zone. You be yourself. Don't put any pressure on her. You learn, and we'll get to being yourself toward the end, but you be who you're going to be. Don't push for the relationship.
Yeah.
You can be friends and learn to accept the friends. And if she likes you as a friend, maybe that'll work your way back in. But if you're constantly trying to push for the romance side of it, we want to be boyfriend, girlfriend. If she said friend zone, that means friend zone. Leave that alone.
And that ties into this listen or be interested in what they have to say and kind of listen to them. You'll pick up on that. But number 4, this is one of those that we're going to say it, and then it's going to be like, okay, well, cool. How do I do that?
Right.
It's tough to quantify, but be charming is kind of the 4th principle or tip. And again, a lot of guys are probably thinking, well, great, thanks, guys. How on earth am I supposed to be charming? But there are a lot of things that play into it, and I'm certainly not going to be the best person to just, okay, this is what charming means, but ask a girl. They could probably tell you what charming is, but it's kind of the idea of you don't take yourself too seriously. You're not obnoxious and boisterous and the guy that is just the clown of the room. You don't self-deprecate with jokes and things like that. There's a lot of things that tie into it, but there's kind of a suave smoothness to it where it's like, I can talk to this guy. He's enjoyable to be around. I think that's the biggest part. You're enjoyable to be around. That's what charm's really all about.
I think that's a great point. When we were talking off air, like, what is charming? It is difficult to quantify because each girl is going to view charming a little bit differently. But I agree with you. I think that not taking yourself too seriously is huge. Yeah. Having that sense of humor and having that ease where you exude like, man, I'm open for anything. I'm open for any adventure. If you want to talk for an hour, that's great. I'll talk with you. I'm curious. But if you want to not and you want to go, hey, that's cool too. It's not passivity as much as it's kind of a go with the flow. And like you said, I don't take myself too seriously where if it is a self-deprecating joke, like you said, don't make all self-deprecating jokes right and left just to cut the tension. But if you need to make one here or there and show that you don't take yourself too seriously, be willing to be the butt of the joke. sometimes and be willing to throw some shade and have some fun with it.
I think everybody in here has been around somebody it's just kind of uncomfortable to be around them, right? And for whatever reason, it's one of those things you're kind of on edge when you're around them. And again, there could be a thousand reasons. But then you've also been around the people that they're just genuinely enjoyable to be around. Yeah. Good to talk to. Again, they have the really good sense of humor, just really enjoy being around them, guy or girl. That's kind of what we're talking about here. The idea that whether you get into a relationship with this girl or not, she really enjoys being around you. That's the first step.
Ask yourself, if you know people in your life like that, what is it that I like about them?
Try to pinpoint it.
Pinpoint what you think is likable and enjoyable and emulate that. Do that yourself. Go after that. Seek that. Say, man, I love the fact that every time we have a conversation, they listen to me, but they also... There's not a lot of judgment as much as there's curiosity, and they ask a lot of questions, and they discuss difficult topics, and here's another part of the charming. This may be on another part of the outline, but another part of the charming. We'll get to this with Be Yourself, but when it comes to the things that you like, you may like some goofy things. You can make that really charming, or you can make that really annoying.
Really dorky.
Really dorky. Be aware of the likes and the quirks and things like that. Like I said, we'll get to that toward the end a little more. We'll get into it.
Sure.
But just be aware from the charming point of view that girls want somebody who's going to be interested in deep things. One of the things that my wife appreciated the most, this is not to brag at all. I had no idea she appreciated it. She told me later. She said, you didn't talk about the dumb things. We were talking about psychology. We were talking about raising families. We were talking about deep spiritual things, the Holy Spirit and the indwelling of the Holy Spirit and things like that.
Your conversations didn't end at Marvel movies. Is basically what you're saying.
Exactly. And there was a certain charm there where she's like, wow, that was really cool that we were able to talk. And I'm sure Rachel has the same stories about you where there was depth there. That's part of the charming, in my opinion, is having a little more depth than just talking about the weather, talking about Marvel films, talking about the newest Beyonce album. Please, if that's you, don't ever mention
Number one way to not be charming.
Yeah, exactly. Don't ever mention that you listen to that. Anyway, any other thoughts on that?
No, I would say I want you to kind of get us into this. Where are we on number 5? Yeah, number five, because this one is one of those where if you sway too far in one direction, you can kind of wind up in the ditch. Your brother Jack uses that analogy a lot. We want to stay in the road. We want to stay in the middle. There's a ditch on one side, there's a ditch on the other. So get us into this fifth one.
Number 5 is don't be Mr. Tough Guy. Don't be Mr. Tough Guy. Now, to your point, the opposite side of it is don't be Mr. Overly Emotional.
Yeah.
This is going to sound terrible. The friend zone guys, that a lot of the guys that are squishy.
This is so true.
That are squishy. They're just friends with all the girls, and they're very emotional.
They're so
girls
sensitive.
They're they're the girl's confidant, and they're very sensitive. But the girl is also their confidant, and they just need a shoulder to cry on sometimes. Like, look, we all need a shoulder to cry on, but go to your best bud, who better be a guy.
Well, yeah.
Don't do that. Now, if you're married, that's different. But if you're talking about going to a girl and you swing to that side of the overly emotional, you look like a wimp.
That's the guy that the girls pat on the shoulder and say, there, pal, or buddy.
Exactly. Yeah. You get friend zoned in about 0.2 seconds.
Right.
To the flip side, don't be Mr. Tough Guy who just has zero emotion, can't ever talk about his emotion, can't ever talk about
kind of this idea of macho.
Exactly. Anything other than, I went to the gym today and I lifted, I squatted 360 pounds. Like, okay, she doesn't really care. So truly, if you're taking the Mr. Tough Guy approach, I really feel like that also can alienate them because they don't get that. Now, it may be you may remind them of somebody and they find that attractive. Most of the time,
this is one of those things that culture kind of tells you need to have this. Again, I keep using the word facade, but that's really what it is, that you're this macho guy that doesn't show emotions, and you're just the epitome of manliness, and it is. There's a balance there. But I would tend to think, based on the conversations that I've had with other people, girls don't want somebody that they don't think is authentic, that they don't think is vulnerable, that just thinks that this is a guy that never struggles with anything, never has any problems. He just is this Superman type of guy. Yeah. Those guys don't exist. Okay. Right. And so that's one of those things that, again, there's a balance there. I think you said that very well. I want to go and move on to number 6,
sure,
unless you have something else to add.
No, go for it.
Number 6 out of our 7 here is, again, there's a balance here. But I would say don't get your identity tied up in a girl. A lot of guys can fall into this, especially younger guys, where their entire world revolves around who are they texting right now? Who are they Snapchatting right now? Who are they dating right now? And if they don't have a girl, they're doing everything in their power to get one. Everything else goes to the back burner. Don't do that. Listen, again, we think that girls and learning how to be a godly husband and thinking about marriage, those are all things you need to push towards. But if your entire identity, if your entire world is wrapped up in that's setting you up for failure.
That's right. If you're not enough without the girl, you won't be enough with the girl, which I think I just ripped off Tony Stark. I think that's a Spider-Man quote, Homecoming. I think I could be off on that.
Speaking of Marvel.
Yeah, exactly. I'm a geek. But, yeah. But if you're not enough without the girl, if your whole identity is either in getting the girl or in keeping the girl, what happens to you if there is no girl? Well, Who are you? Now I'm just a blob of nothing until I get a girl, and that will form me into, now I have value. Now I have worth. Now I have, something that I can strive for because there's a girl. You have to find who you are on your own, and don't let your entire identity be wrapped up in whether you go to talk to this girl, she says no, and your life is destroyed. That was my one shot. No, it wasn't.
Now, again, don't mishear us. We're not saying that you need to be the guy that's like, I'm just going to be a bachelor my entire life. I don't care about girls. Yeah. Marriage is stupid. I don't want any kids. That's not biblical, okay? That's not being a godly young man at all. This is one of those things that with anything, with your sports, with your job, according to the New Testament, according to God's word, we're supposed to seek after him first. Right. We're supposed to be Christ-centered first, follow after Christ first.
Find your identity in Christ.
Find our identity in Christ. If we're following anything other than Christ as the primary thing that we're following, we're going to set ourselves up for failure, whether it's girls or our academics, wealth, whatever it is. But that certainly applies here. Sometimes we can get so tied into the chase and trying to get a girl and staying with a girl, we lose sight of our Christianity. We lose sight of the fact that we're supposed to be godly young men. And finding a girl and getting married is a part of that, but it cannot be the number one thing that you're striving for.
We talked earlier about them being human. Don't be afraid of them because they're just human. That also applies here. They're human. They will let you down. They will say hurtful things. They will do things that are just not nice. And if you are wrapped up in that, that's a great point. We have to find it in Christ because though he was fully man, he's fully God. He Hebrews 4, he's a high priest that understands us because he empathizes with us. He gets what we're going through, and that's who we're striving to be like is Christ, because there's no higher calling than that. A human, a girl, even friends, putting our identity in them, they will fail us at some point, and where do we go from there?
Speaking of being like Christ, I'm going to audible here.
Okay.
I'm going to add one.
Okay.
That we don't have on our list.
Interesting.
And it's one that we could have fit into some of these other ones, but I'm going to let you get us into the last one after this, so you'll get into number 8. Number 7, and again, this one that I'm kind of adding here, you've got to learn to be respectful towards girls. This is one we could have fit into any of these, but again, the world and culture is pushing young men. It's all about pornography. It's all about sex drive. It's all about girls with the nice bodies and all these things. And when culture is pushing you that direction, as we talked about with the Say the Hard Things episode, it can be very tempted to just not swim upstream and just go with the flow of the culture. That is not okay.
Right.
This idea that you are going to be in it just for one thing, again, getting a girlfriend and doing things with that girl that you shouldn't be. Listen, if that's your objective, you need to go back to the very beginning of your relationship with God and start there.
That's right.
But I think that's, again, one of the steps that maybe we should have started with. This has got to all come from a place of respect. You're not trying to do things that you shouldn't be doing. You're trying to simply talk to, learn to have a conversation with them. But I think that's so important for guys to come to the table with that framework of mind, that you are simply trying to get to know this girl from a very respectful point of view, respecting her parents, that kind of thing. What do you have to add to that? Because I didn't have that on the outline.
Yeah, just don't objectify them. Don't objectify
that's a great way to put it.
Like they are children of God, which is another point we didn't have on here. Don't be going after any girl who's not in the church.
Yeah,
that
should go without saying.
That should go without saying.
Godly young man.
That's exactly it. Don't go, outside of that. That's imperative. But I
was just gonna say we're gonna have an episode more so about what to look for in a girl. That's why we're not going too much into that, because that could be, we could go another 20 minutes on that. But sorry,
I just want to make sure that as we go to talk to girls, like don't be talking to the girl at the skating park or whatever it may be, because wow, she's really cute. Yeah, but does she have any values?
Pool, right?
Exactly. Does she have any values that align? But I think that's a really good point. Just to again, we probably should have put that one first. Respect is key. Make sure you're respect everybody, but make sure you're respecting her first as a child of God and as a creation of God, not looking to objectify and find out if she's got an OnlyFans page. That's not what we're here to do.
1st or 2nd Timothy, I'm not sure which one it is, that talks about you treat him as a sister in Christ.
Right.
You might know better than I should have looked it up before, but That's the way you treat them. You're not looking to objectify them. All those things. We already covered it. Get us to number 8. This was kind of the one that you wanted to go in on a little bit, and then we'll wrap up with this one.
It's so cliche.
Yeah, it really
cliche.
is.
We were talking about how do we make it not cliche. Be yourself. Number 8. Be yourself.
So cheesy.
It's as cheesy as I'll get out because. Yeah, any movie, it sounds like a Disney movie, to be honest. Just be yourself. What does that practically mean?
Because this is a ditch one, too. You can go way too far here.
Big time. Because sometimes being yourself is not good.
Yeah.
We want to make sure that in being yourself, we don't put up with all of our sins and put up with all of our faults and say, oh, well, it's perfectly fine. What we're trying to say here is there's an authenticity that comes with talking to girls. The authenticity has to come through, has to shine through, because if you are projecting to be somebody that you're not, you will always wonder, did they fall in love with the projection or did they fall in love with me?
Yeah. Which
is really painful for a guy, and I've worked with guys who genuinely don't know if their wife loves them because she loved the part of me that I allowed her to see. I don't know that she loved the porn addict. I don't know that I'm not saying you have to go out and talk to the girls first thing about that, but there has to be an authenticity there where you are yourself. Your jokes are authentically yours. Your likes and dislikes are authentically yours. Yeah, if you're Dungeons and Dragons or majorly into, no offense to a couple people closer to us, if you're majorly into, I'm a big Harry Potter guy, but you know what? That's okay.
Nerd. Sorry,
I am. I'm just kidding. But yeah. Married with 3 kids somehow. I don't know how that
Your
happened.
poor wife. No.
Exactly. Yeah. I actually got her to read it for the first time.
Nice.
Recently, and she never. Yeah.
But it's one of those things. It's like, don't hide your quirks.
Exactly.
Don't hide the things that you like.
Right.
You like Harry Potter. I love sports. I'm not gonna be the guy that's like, and you love sports too. I didn't mean you're a Harry Potter guy and I'm a sports guy. But I mean, like, don't hide the things.
Quidditch is a sport, right?
Yeah, exactly. Sorry. Don't hide the things that you like. But at the same time, if all you can find to talk about is Lord of the Rings and again the latest Marvel movie or whatever, number 1, find some new hobbies. But number 2, don't make that the epitome of yourself.
Right.
And when you're talking about being yourself,
we talk about identity a lot. Like, I view identity as rings that move out from there, and your likes and dislikes and hobbies and your job or your school or whatever, your intelligence, your family, relationships, all of those are part of this. Your identity ought to be several things. This goes back to number 6, about the whole identity being with the girl. But your identity ought to be varied, and that way when you go to talk to a girl, there's like 16 things that I could talk to you about that I find to be interesting.
Yeah.
And what do you find to be interesting? Let me be curious about it. But when it comes to being yourself, own some of that stuff. Don't push it too much, but own some of that stuff. Be authentic and be okay with again making a joke about yourself occasionally. Yeah. Be okay with just allowing the better parts, the quirky parts, the unique parts of you to shine through. Well, I don't know that she'd like that I like this, and so I'm going to hide that.
Yeah.
Don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. If she doesn't like it, she's not for you. If you have to be somebody different in order to get the girl,
yeah, that's exactly right.
She's not for you. Be yourself, and if they fall for your authentic self, 2 thumbs up, man. That's fantastic. Yeah. And if they don't, move on.
There's a lot of reasons why we wanted to do this episode. Number 1 is because it is on a lot of guys' minds at this age. It's something that's like, look, we're not going to ignore that. This is the Godly Young Men podcast. Girls are on guys' minds. And so we wanted to approach this from a biblical framework perspective of, once again, communication skills are so vital. Yeah. And if you wait to develop those until you're engaged or married, you're going to have a tough road ahead of you. You've got to start now. And again, as we talked about 2 points ago, do it from a framework of respect, not just trying to get them attached to your hip and other things like that. But it starts with the respect. It starts with the good communication skills. It's going to serve you so well in marriage. We're going to wrap there. Before we completely wrap for the episode, there's a bit of business that we have to attend to. I wanted to hit in this episode. We always appreciate and encourage your comments, specifically on YouTube, your ratings, your likes on YouTube, all those things. I wanted to address a comment that we got from a Dr. Quantum.
This is great.
I don't know who you are. First of all, I appreciate you watching. So this is all in fun here. But it was our Say Hard Things episode 5, where we encouraged everybody to kind of comment and a hill that you will die on, an opinion that you have. And this Dr. Quantum individual, which hope you're watching, shout out to you, made the comment that Reese, my brother, is more athletic than I am. I just wanted to clear the air here because I know a lot of people don't know me very well, might not, especially not know my brother very well. That is so not true. I'm
Reese
sorry.
is a lot of things. More athletic than you is not one of them.
Love my brother. He's great. And we'll probably have him on an episode here soon, Reese. I would imagine. But I wanted to address that, Dr. Quantum, again, whoever you are. Get out of here with that stuff. Come on now. Nobody actually thinks that. But in all seriousness, we want you to comment. We want you to, this is a group thing we want you to enjoy. And so if you have a comment specifically about this episode for this week, if you've got something that you think we missed, if you've got something that you want to add, something that you think maybe some other young guys would benefit from, throw it in the comments. Again, we don't have all the answers. This is not the exhaustive list of how to talk to girls, so we want to hear from you. Anything you'd have to add to that?
No, I don't think so.
Yeah, so guys, again, thank you very much for joining us. Happy Valentine's Day. Comment on YouTube, message us on Instagram, and I think that's all we've got for today, so thank you very much for joining us for episode 7 of the Godly Young Men podcast.